Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Playmore69, aka Michael, and this is the All in All Podcast, episode 5. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. It's been a pretty interesting week, at least for the topics that you can see in the title of this episode. And this podcast will be, I guess, a little bit different from the others so far that I have recorded. This will basically be a podcast of a random assortment of topics that were pretty interesting that I thought throughout the week, and trying something a little bit different, because usually I do like a researched episode or a more of a structured episode where I have like a document that I can have tons of notes for and everything. Sorry about the interruption. Literally start the podcast and immediately get phone call in the background. But regardless, yes, this podcast or this episode will be just a random assortment of topics that I thought that were interesting this week and that, I really wanted to talk about. This is the All in All Podcast, so obviously for what I like to do is try different things, and this is more of just a ramble episode. So a lot happened this week in the news, at least on the internet side of things, or made it to popular content creators, and two of them I will be talking about here today are super big when it comes to content creators, talking about them as such. So I want to start off here with the first topic, which is the Travis Scott concert tragedy. This happened at, I think, the very beginning of the week, and this definitely made the rounds on the internet. And I've heard a lot of takes from people. I'm glad that I was able to hear a lot of people's perspectives and takes on this topic, because it was quite out of nowhere, I'll say this. And when it first happened, a lot of people, at least on the internet, have said that, it was not Travis's fault at all during this. He is not to blame whatsoever. It's only the event organizers and the people that were actually staffed at the concert. It was not his fault whatsoever about this tragedy. But then videos surfaced of Travis actually seeing the tragedy unfold. People actually being crowd crushed of what was happening. And the crowd crush, basically, if you don't know, is too many people in one area at once, which results in people being suffocated. And there was 8 people confirmed dead at the concert and over 300 injured. And the cell phone videos that actually surfaced were of people recording Travis Scott as he was performing and seeing these people being crushed. And it looked like for one of them, he did actually seem to stop the show for a little bit, but then continued onward. And the weird part about it is that there was people in the front row, and there is videos of this saying that, you need to stop the concert, but they ended up not doing that. And they were saying this to Travis Scott. They were saying this to the event organizers or the people that were staffed for the actual concert, but they never stopped the concert. The concert went on, and even though that they knew what was going on, they did not stop it. And to me, that is extremely bad, because they disregarded human life in regards for money. That's really what it comes down to, because they knew if they stopped the concert, they would have to refund a ton of tickets and lose a lot of money. And I think that is really the reason for them not stopping the concert, which is really sad to say and also think about, but that's really the reason why they didn't stop it. And I think the next step in this whole debacle or this whole event was the Travis Scott apology video. And up until this point, before Travis Scott even posted the apology video, he was relatively being defended by a lot of people on the internet, at least. A lot of his fans and a lot of people around the internet saying that, it wasn't his fault. He had nothing to do to this. He had nothing. He's not to blame whatsoever. And then the apology video came out, and I just, it's pretty easy to dunk on it, but the easiest thing, or the simplest thing to say, is it was quite literally one of the worst apology videos on the internet that I've seen in a while. Travis Scott showed no sort of emotion or remorse for what happened. He seemed to just be rattling off a script. That's actually what a lot of people have accused Travis Scott of doing. Now, obviously, we don't know whatsoever if he was actually reading off a script or not, but a lot of people have said that he was probably just reading off a script that his lawyers gave him, because this apology video was basically to deflect blame, or basically show that he had no idea what was going on. So this is like a record for the future, because obviously through this event, he's going to get sued. Not only is the event organizers going to get sued, Travis Scott himself will probably get sued. The good thing, with Travis Scott is he probably has amazing lawyers, so he'll probably be fine, but he is going to get sued. And that apology video is basically, will most likely be used as evidence to show that, like, hey, he had no idea what was going on. Because if he actually did a real apology video, he could have said, I'm sorry, I could have stopped it, but I didn't. That's self-incriminating, and that would only hurt him in the future. So I guess my overall take on it is that everyone is to blame in this tragedy. Travis Scott, event organizers, the staff there, anyone who had power to stop the concert. They could have stopped it, but they decided against it. And that to me is just blame on all parties. But the simplest thing to say is that it's just a tragedy, and we have to look at it as such. And also, a reason why I did talk about it is that I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but my hometown is actually Houston. So this actually hits close to home. I actually lived in Houston for the first 18 years of my life. I lived all the way, I remember going to elementary, middle school, high school there. It's actually quite funny. I finished high school, and the exact day after I finished, the very next day I moved, and now I live in the middle of nowhere, Texas. So yeah, I lived there for 18 years, and I've also thought about moving back to Houston. It's quite a good place, little ghetto, but it works. And also, this was a super big event, and I think a lot of people are Travis Scott fans, at least for the people that did talk about it, at least that I saw the YouTubers that were talking about it, that they were obviously familiar with Travis Scott. He's definitely a big name, but the traction behind this topic has seemed to subside throughout the week. So I think that's all I wanted to say on the topic, is that it's a tragedy. I think all parties should be blamed, but that is really what happened. So yeah, it's nothing short but a tragedy. Anyways, let's move on to the main topic of this podcast that will end up being the main topic. So this was obviously, I think this was just announced about 2 days ago on YouTube, and I have a lot to say about this topic. So YouTube has said that they are removing the dislike rating. So let me just get that straight so everyone understands it. They're removing the dislike rating, meaning the dislike button is still going to be there, but the rating itself is going to be obviously hidden. So you won't know how many dislikes a public video has, but you will be able to see the number of likes a public video has. So in my opinion, this is a very bad change, because you can already disable ratings on YouTube on your channel, because apparently they are doing this move to protect content creators from targeted harassment, or whatever the case might be. But to me, if you can already disable ratings, why remove the dislike rating for everyone? Why not just add this option for people out there who want to do it? That you can disable ratings, but if you disable ratings, you can't see the like rating or the dislike rating. But how about just add this option for people who want to use it? Because I'm sure that a lot of YouTubers out there would love to keep their like and dislike rating, but there are probably some YouTubers that only want to hide their dislikes because maybe they get a lot. So I think that this is something that they could just add and not enforce on everyone, but I don't really know. I digress. And I think the whole reason for the dislike rating is for YouTubers and content creators to learn if they are making bad videos or if they are putting out videos that their audience might not like. And the reason I say that is not everyone uses comments. Definitely not everyone uses comments on YouTube. Most people are only viewers of YouTube. A small percentage of people actually like or dislike the video, and a very small percentage of people actually comment on the video. And an even smaller percentage of those comments are actually read, because a lot of YouTube comments are never even seen by most people. And now, after thinking about this for at least the past couple of days, I've been able to kind of come to a conclusion, at least in my head, that this probably isn't going to affect the vast majority of large YouTubers. And the reason I say that is that pretty much every large YouTuber that I'm aware of has some form of other social media. Now, most YouTubers do have social medias, but the reason that this won't affect very large YouTubers is because their social medias are very active, and they'll be able to see responses a lot more quickly, and they'll be able to see a more wide range of responses. So, for instance, I'll just think of a random YouTuber. I think a lot of YouTubers I watch are actually Twitch streamers. I'll just throw out a random one. Okay, Ludwig. He was the first one that came to mind. So let's say if Ludwig posts a video, and it's a bad video, but dislike ratings are not there. Obviously, he can see through YouTube comments that, oh, it was a bad video. But for instance, if, all the comments were good or whatever, he would be able to see it on his certain other social medias. Like, most YouTubers have a subreddit, most YouTubers have a Twitter, most YouTubers have an Instagram. And they'll be able to see comments from their viewers that, oh, this video is bad, instead of just looking at the dislikes. But when it comes to like smaller YouTubers like myself, I'm a very small YouTuber. I only have just over 1,000 subscribers. I don't have any other social medias apart from a Twitter, but I don't even have any tweets, I don't think. So yeah, the only way I get responses is actually through my comments or my likes and dislikes. So I feel this feature of disabling the dislike rating is only really going to hurt the smaller YouTubers. For the vast majority of bigger YouTubers that have other social media platforms that their audience follows them to, this probably isn't going to affect them to much extent at all. Instead of just looking at an easy like to dislike ratio, they can just read a couple comments on their social media and be able to determine, like, okay, this was a very bad video, I know what to fix next time. So that's kind of what I've came to the conclusion of. Also, the general consensus of what I've heard from the reasoning of YouTube is doing this is actually to protect brands. So YouTube obviously makes a vast majority of its money through big brands making videos on YouTube. So this is like TV shows, news networks. You can think of like CNN, NBC, CBS, and you can think of other TV shows like the late night shows, all of them, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, all of those. That's where YouTube makes their money, because if those big brands that, put their videos on YouTube, that's very helpful for YouTube, and that is what they are trying to protect, at least in my opinion. So with this protecting of brands, I think the removal of the dislike rating is really helpful for all of the brands on YouTube, because they don't have to look at people, disliking their videos, which ultimately will give them a more positive opinion about YouTube itself. So they'll buy in more to YouTube and feel, I guess, less pressure about putting videos on YouTube themselves. And you can even look at, those channels I just mentioned, like the TV shows or the news channels. Those are the ones that YouTube always recommends on your homepage. You think if you open up on your homepage, there's always a tab, and there's always shows like that in the trending or in the news tab. on YouTube. You know, we don't just see traditional YouTubers anymore just presented on the homepage like that. You know, it's all a lot more corporate now, which I tend to dislike, but that's just my opinion. But following the corporate kind of theory that I have behind it is when I talked about the tabs that YouTube kind of puts out there, if we can think about, now I'll preface this by saying this is a complete conspiracy theory. I don't want to seem like I am a conspiracy theorist behind this. This is just something I had a thought about this week when I heard this, and this immediately went to my mind. So I think this for every American or United States YouTube. So for any of my United States watchers of YouTube, I don't know if you can confirm this or not, but this has been the case for me. So for about the past 2 years, what has been going on? COVID, obviously. And what has happened on YouTube is that the first recommended after your first like couple of videos, your first screen of recommended, if you scroll down a little bit, it's always COVID news. It's always there, COVID news, and it's always just news networks reporting COVID. And this has been forced down pretty much everyone, for at least the United States viewers out there, for about the past 2 years. And with this, these videos get about 90% dislikes. I've always clicked on one of these videos just to see every now and then, and they always are 90% dislikes. And I don't think it's the majority of Americans who watch YouTube are just disliking it because they think COVID is fake or anything. I think they're disliking it because YouTube is just constantly recommending this to people. And people are getting quite annoyed by this, you know, I would say pretty rightfully so, because why can't we as viewers of YouTube just have our own home pages? Like, I genuinely asked about this question and thought about it, is why can't we still customize our own YouTube homepage in 2021? YouTube has been released now. It was released in 2005. So YouTube is 16 years old, and we still cannot customize our YouTube homepage, which I find very annoying. If we could customize our own homepage, I think that would solve a lot of YouTube's problems. But sadly, we still can't, because if we could customize our own YouTube homepage, I think about something like where you could, like when you first open YouTube, you see like 12 or 16 videos, like in a 4x4 or whatever, how you see it. And like the first video you see, it can be it could be the latest upload from your favorite YouTuber. And then the second video you see could be the next upload to your favorite YouTuber, and the third could be, you know, your second favorite YouTuber, their latest upload. Like, that is how I see the customization page or the YouTube homepage being customizable. But instead, YouTube just uses their algorithm to send videos to you, which sometimes works. You know, sometimes they recommend great videos. But to me, the fact that there's no customization for the YouTube homepage for the actual user makes no sense in 2021. And I just feel that they should look more into that. Like, I feel YouTube, well, I think most people can agree to this, that YouTube has been declining, you know, for the past like at least 5 to 6 years. You know, they became very corporate. You know, they don't seem to care about the actual individual users. They seem to just care about corporations now. And I think that's really hurting their roots, you know, where they came from. Because, you know, before, when YouTube just first started, it was only individual creators. And now it's more corporate, and I don't think that they're giving love to those individual creators. And YouTube just seems to be making mistake after mistake for the past couple of years, or at least the past 5 to 6 years. They're definitely are very far removed from their golden age years. And I think removing the dislike rating seems very small, but I think is going to have a very large impact on YouTube. And obviously with them just removing it, you know, or removing the rating, I feel that, you know, by next year, or at least by 2023 or something like that, the dislike button is just not even going to be there anymore. Or it might be in like a completely different location. Like you might have to like click the three dots and then dislike it that way. Like either they're going to bury the dislike button or just straight up remove it. So this was pretty small, but I actually did some research on why they're removing the dislike button. And it was actually back in March of 2021, so March of this year, so about 8 months ago, they actually were doing testing on this with certain videos. And they found that with removing the actual dislike button rating, so you couldn't see the rating anymore, which they're going to be implementing soon, I don't know when, but they concluded from their research that people are less likely to actually use the dislike button if you can't see the rating. So obviously with the conclusion of that research, it does show that it is killing the actual functionality of the dislike button. So what this means is that YouTubers will actually be able to still see their dislikes in their YouTube studios. So if you don't know that when you have a channel and you upload videos, you look at something, a portal called like YouTube Studios, and it shows you all your analytics and everything like that. And with this, it actually shows your likes and dislikes, how many subscribers you have, how many subscribers you had in the past 30 days, what videos do well. So a lot of YouTubers use this for like their likes and dislikes to see what video performs well. And with killing the functionality of the dislike button is that people are less likely to use it because they're not seeing the impact that what their dislike does. YouTubers will have no idea how many dislikes will really be on their videos. So they could get very much like false positives on their channel showing that like, oh, this video did really well, when in fact that just users weren't disliking it because of the removal of the actual dislike rating. And I really feel like this is going to impact me as a small YouTuber because, you know, some of my podcasts might get a lot of likes, but, you know, not a lot of dislikes, even though it was a bad podcast that my, you know, viewer base just didn't want to view. And I can actually give a pretty good example of this and of why the dislike button or the dislike rating really does work and has a lot of impact. So there's actually a pretty popular podcast that I listen to called PKA, Painkiller Already. It's actually quite an old school podcast that's been around now for about a decade. And just recently on the podcast, there was a host called Kyle. And he recently got off of his probation, so now he can finally smoke weed again, and he actually moved to Colorado to do so. And he said, you know, this was a 3-long wait period, that, you know, the day he became off of probation, he would, you know, smoke a lot of weed, do a lot of edibles, whatever, and, you know, it would be really fun for the podcast. And that first podcast that actually happened with him off of parole that happened, I think about a month and a half ago or something like that, he actually didn't smoke anything or eat anything. You know, he was actually pretty silent during that whole podcast, and that podcast got dislike bombed absolutely to hell. Now, what this did was show, you know, the PKA host. Now, I think they could have, you know, shown it or seen it when it come to their like Reddit or something like that, but it showed a big impact because not all the viewers are going to be on Reddit or all of their other social medias. You know, some of them just view them on YouTube, like myself. You know, I'm not a part of like any of their other social medias. I know they have a Discord and a Reddit, but, you know, I've never explored that far. So what this showed the PKA host is they addressed it in the very next podcast, and Kyle ended up, you know, smoking and eating edibles, and the next podcast was great. And that was an immediate impact that the dislike button had. And there probably are many other examples of the dislike button or the dislike rating really helping a lot of YouTubers see their mistakes that they do. But, you know, that's just one that really stuck out to me that was really important, you know, that I saw just like a month ago. And now, obviously, the dislike rating is going to be removed permanently from YouTube. And it's just, you know, really disheartening, at least for me on YouTube, because I just feel that YouTube is making mistake after mistake when it comes to their platform. But that's just my opinion. And funny thing about the research that they did back in March is they said from that research that they were not going to remove the dislike button or the rating, which I thought, which was great back then. Not a lot of people even knew about that research going on. It was quite small, but I actually did see it and read their research. But I will leave a link down below, I think, for the actual article that they put out of why they are removing the dislike rating. I actually found both articles right here. Their March 2021 study and also their update from 2 days ago. So yeah, this is the one from November 10th where they officially said that they were removing the dislike rating, but there are a lot of interesting comments here, and I think the top one really sums it up. If a creator cannot handle criticism, he or she should not be able to present anything to a social audience. I mean, that's kind of the risk you take with like producing or creating content for any site. It doesn't matter if it's YouTube or Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. You have to handle criticism. And if you don't want to handle criticism, then you can just disable the ratings on YouTube. Like, I don't know why that is not more of a discussion. If they genuinely think that people, they're trying to protect their creators or trying to protect people from criticism, why not just tell people to disable their ratings or just add this feature for people to enable if they so choose to? But if the dislikes were not being removed, I would keep them as long as I could. For as long as I had a YouTube channel, and even if it's just a feature I have to enable to actually enable dislikes, I would enable it back because it gives me an idea of what my audience wants and if I make a bad video or not. But I guess the removal of the dislike rating from YouTube is, at least in my opinion, YouTube is trying to be more like other social medias. So if you think about other social medias that don't have a dislike button, like Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all of those don't have a dislike button whatsoever. And I think Facebook had a dislike button, but they removed it as well. I don't think really any major social media platform or mainstream social media platform that people use actually have a dislike button. I think Reddit is the only one I can think about, but Reddit is more of a, I guess Reddit is mainstream, but it just doesn't seem to come up in the conversation when you like talk about social media such as like, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram. Those are all like quote unquote like normie social medias. Like normal people use those social medias. And I guess normal people use Reddit too, but I don't know. Reddit is like the butt end of like every joke on the internet, which I agree with. There's some weird motherfuckers on Reddit. Regardless, I will link both posts down below in the description. I'll link their March study, and I'll also link their latest study where their latest post that they said that they were officially disabling the dislike counter, and also where they answer a couple of interesting questions. Additionally, in their post of where they announced that they are removing the dislike counter is a video that they put out, and this video inevitably got dislike bombed. I currently looked at it and it's had 11k likes and 62k dislikes, and I actually watched that video. I recommend you watching it. It's only about 3 minutes long, but it's very funny. In the video they say that they're trying to give everyone a voice, but subsequently they're just disabling a large group of people's voice because you're just disabling these people's voice by saying like, oh, you can't hate on people's content because that's just not cool in our opinion. And it's actually quite weird for what their wording is in these kind of questions. Is one of their answers to the questions is they actually said they were trying to protect smaller creators on YouTube for them not to get hate. But why wouldn't you want new YouTubers to get hate? Getting hate on YouTube is how you learn what to do, what is right, or how to grow an audience. if I'm doing the wrong things, I would like to see that my audience is telling me that I am doing the wrong things, the stuff that they don't want to see. That's not how you grow an audience. I think that YouTube is almost, at least very disconnected in my opinion after reading their post and watching the video, is they seem totally disconnected for what it means to actually be a small YouTuber and start creating content. Also, I would recommend when looking at these posts from YouTube is you can actually see replies from users, both on the March 2021 study and the official post that YouTube put out 2 days ago. And I think these comments really sum up what most of us are thinking. And also the funny thing about these posts is they're actually posted on like support.google docs, and you can actually dislike them as well, to say if it's helpful or not, and it got dislike bombed. So that's kind of ironic that they're trying to disable the dislike counter, but yet they're posting it on, a Google like kind of help page, and you can still dislike it. That's not helpful, which is quite interesting. And I think my final take on this topic is, unfortunately, we might have to use the C word when it comes to this, which is censorship. YouTube might be trying to censor a group of people, and these people just might be deemed as the people who hate on YouTube, or the people that go around disliking videos because they want to. And even though that you should have, the right to do that, I think that YouTube is kind of using this as a form of censorship for people they don't like. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about the YouTube disliking or disabling the dislike counter. In my opinion, it's a bad move, but we'll have to wait and see how it turns out. So I guess that leads us into our next topic, and this topic I highly debated on actually mentioning on the podcast, but since this is the All in All podcast, and I said from the start that I will be talking about, pretty much any topic I can, this has been in the news and gaining traction, and is actually coming to a close next week. I think Monday there will actually be the verdict, and that is the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. So if you don't know, I'm assuming everyone from the United States knows who Kyle Rittenhouse is. He was charged with murder, I think 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. And this trial is now going on. And this happened last year when he was 17 at the time. He's 18 now. And this was, I think, in the middle of the BLM riots. He was out there trying to protect businesses and he ended up killing 2 people and I think injuring 1. And I actually have the page here. I'll link this in the description below. This is just a New York Times article. This is just detailing what he's actually charged with. So the trial has been going on for about 2 weeks now, and the verdict is actually coming out Monday, from what I believe. If there's not any more delays with the trial, we will hear the verdict Monday and see what he is actually charged with. So he's actually charged with 6 counts, and I will read them off now. So first count is first-degree reckless homicide. So under Wisconsin law, this crime is defined as recklessly causing the death of another human being under circumstances that show utter disregard for human life. It is not necessary for prosecutors to provide the intent to kill. Charges that are generally known as murder counts in other states are called homicides under Wisconsin law. So Mr. Rittenhouse is accused of this crime in connection with the fatal shooting of Joseph D. Rosenbaum. It is a Class B felony that carries a basic sentence up to 60 years in prison. So that is his first account. That's obviously, I think, the biggest one, because being charged with that, a basic sentence of 60 years in prison, or up to 60 years in prison, if he gets charged with that, he's basically gone for good at that point. But then we have counts 2 and 5, which are first degree recklessly endangered of safety. This law defines the crime as recklessly endangering another person's safety under circumstances that show utter disregard for human life. Mr. Rittenhouse is charged with recklessly endangering two people who, according to the criminal complaint, has shots fired towards them but not hit. This is Richard McGinnis and an unknown male seen in the video of the episode. This crime is a Class F felony that carries a basic sentence up to 12 and a half years in prison, a fine up to $25,000 or both for each of the two accounts. Count 3 is first-degree intentional homicide. This crime is the first-degree murder in other states, is defined as causing the death of another human being with the intent to kill a person or someone else without the presence of a certain mitigating circumstance specific in the law. Mr. Rittenhouse faces this charge in connection with the fatal shooting of Anthony M. Hubbard. Is a Class A felony that carries a basic sentence of life in prison. Count 4 is attempted first-degree intentional homicide. Attempting to commit first-degree intentional homicide is a Class B felony under Wisconsin law. Mr. Rittenhouse faces this charge in connection with the shooting of Gage Grosskreutz, who was struck and wounded. It carries a basic sentence of 60 years in prison. And count 6, which is the possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. Though Wisconsin is an open carry state, it is illegal for people that are non-adults to carry firearms that are open carry. So the state prohibits minors from doing so. So Mr. Rittenhouse was only 17 at the time of the shooting. This is a Class A misdemeanor that carries a basic sentence of up to 9 months in prison or a fine of $10,000 or both. So with all of those charges now known, I guess I can give my take on it before the trial actually concludes Monday, hopefully. So we hopefully will hear the verdict Monday, but I guess I'll give my opinion on the trial now. So at least looking at the charges, it doesn't look good for him, but looking at the videos, it does look good for him. So if you've watched the videos, the cell phone videos of Kyle Rittenhouse and the whole situation, it does seem to lean towards more of self-defense than actual just straight up murder. So I guess my take on the trial, or basically the incident, is that to me, it's a case of common sense. There's a person with a gun, which he is open carrying it, which is legal, but they didn't know he was 17 at the time, so which is illegal. But for instance, let's just say that, open carry, that it's a law that is legal in Wisconsin. So to me, why would you pick a fight with someone with a gun? It just does not seem, it just doesn't seem like it makes any sense there. I can't find any sense there of why would I make someone mad or try to fight them or try to chase after them with a gun. Now, he shouldn't have had the gun in the first place because A, he was 17, so he shouldn't have been able to carry it. But at least in my opinion, when it comes to the actual crime itself, murder, I think these people picked a bad fight that they were not going to win. And that's really what happened. It's a tragedy. But I think as an adult, you should know that, like, hey, if someone has a gun, maybe I probably shouldn't pick a fight with them, because that seems to me of what happened in the video. I mean, one of them was even chasing Kyle, and it was just, why even do that? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's just not going to shoot you? To me, it's just a basic common sense law in that. And it doesn't matter what age I am, or my intelligence level. I think that I could have the basic common sense that if someone has a gun, I probably shouldn't chase after them or yell at them or do anything to them for them to inflict harm on me, because it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Also, I would like to add to this that I do identify as a liberal on the left side of the political compass. So I think that being a liberal, I can still be pro-gun. There are a lot of liberals that still are very pro-gun, and I don't think this is really a case of pro-gun versus not pro-gun. This is more of a case of self-defense versus murder, or was it self-defense or was it murder? And a lot of people have inflated it to, oh, this is more of a gun thing, which I don't think it is. I think this is just more of a case of self-defense versus murder, but we'll have to wait and see the verdict and what really happens Monday, because I know that is going to be quite a big verdict to happen. I think the National Guard is already going to be there at the courthouse Monday, because the verdict will or should be announced Monday. So I wouldn't say expect riots, but if he gets off from the murder charges, I would not be surprised if there were riots to be broken out in Wisconsin. So those were the three topics that I really wanted to talk about today, that were in the news, obviously. YouTube disabling the dislike counter, the Travis Scott concert tragedy, and the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. So with all that, I'd like to add one more topic, and I think this topic is just the general podcast in itself. And I just want to start off by saying thank you to everyone out there that listens to the podcast. I know that my viewer base is really small with this podcast so far. I know I don't get a lot of views, but like I said before, I don't look at those sort of things. I'm just happy that I'm doing the podcast. And I also wanted to add, it's been very good for my mental health to do this podcast, because I truly don't feel like I've been happy, at least in a while. Like, I haven't had this sense of happiness, but I have to say, of doing this podcast every single week, I have felt like absolutely amazing. This is like a great experience to every single week do a podcast and post it on YouTube. And, I don't really care how many views it gets. I'm just glad I'm able to do it. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there who does take the time out of your day to actually listen to the podcast. But this has been absolutely amazing for me, and it is a great experience to do. And I'm glad I am back into content creation, and it gives me hope that I will do more content creation in the future. Because when I first started this podcast, or started it back up, about a month ago, and started doing content creation again, I did not see myself doing other things. But I think more projects are coming in the future, at least the betterment of the podcast. But I think more projects to my YouTube channel, at least content creation wise, are coming. I just have to figure out what those projects actually are. But I do have the motivation again, and making it, to this is my 5th episode in the podcast. It shows me that I have the drive to do content creation again. It wasn't just a fluke that I just did a couple podcasts and was like, oh, this is great. But it gave me the sense that I am back, and I am glad that I am doing content creation. So with all of this, I don't know the projects that I will do on my YouTube channel in the future, but maybe it will come from suggestions from my viewers, but I'll have to wait and see. And as for topics on the podcast, I don't want to say I've run out of topics already, because I'm only on episode 5, but I kind of have a lack of topics as of right now. I do have topics I could do, but I don't know, I don't have the full research yet. Usually when I do a topic, I want to cover it fully and have research behind it, for every single point I make. Like with my global fertility crisis episode 2, I had 10 articles linked, I think. So when it comes to topics, there are topics I definitely want to do. I think a topic next week will be dating, and I think women's high dating standards nowadays, and how that affects the male population. So I think that'll be an interesting episode, and I definitely want to do an episode on comedy. I have a couple of opinions on that. mainly because comedy nowadays has become such a hot button topic for a lot of people, and it is something that I think that I want to do an episode on. And also I have the topic of doing a tier list. So this will be a podcast tier list of my favorite podcasts that I've listened to over the years. I've been listening to podcasts now for at least a decade at this point. So there could be a wide range of podcasts on my tier list, and I think that would be a really good episode as well. But I think as for that might be the extent of my episodes, or at least the topics that I have. But obviously, I think I can do episodes more like this, where I talk about just very big news stories or things that happen throughout the week on the internet that are very important, or that a lot of people are talking about. Like, for instance, the Travis Scott concert tragedy was talked about literally everywhere on the internet, especially on YouTube. And obviously, YouTube announcing that they will disable the dislike counter is obviously pretty big as well, because it directly affects YouTube and will directly affect me and my channel. So that was obviously something that needed to be talked about. But as always, if you have any topics that you would like me to discuss, I said this in my first episode, and I think I've said this in every episode, that I will discuss literally anything, because this is the All in All podcast. So if you have any sort of topics that you would love for me to discuss, I definitely just leave a comment down below, and I will either research it or just give my opinion on it and talk about it in the next podcast that I can. So anything that you would like me to talk about, just put in the comments and I will listen to them, because I read all the comments on my podcast. So I think that wraps up all of the major topics that I wanted to cover on the podcast. I just have a couple of micro things to cover, and that's just about the YouTube channel as well. Is that I was looking at my YouTube channel, and I have 1,083 subscribers currently. So I'm almost at 1.1K, which I want to say thank you for the support on my channel and all the new subscribers I have. Additionally, I'm very close to being able to monetize my channel. I'm actually only about 30 watch hours away from monetizing the channel, I think, which is pretty crazy. I still haven't made the decision yet if I actually want to monetize my channel, because I'm really just doing this for fun, but it might become, a source of income later. But I did start this, or I did start content creation even in the beginning, purely for entertainment purposes and for my own pleasure. So I don't know if I will actually monetize my videos, but I guess I'll have to make that decision when it comes forth. But for now, again, I will not. I'm still under the no choice, but I'll have to wait and see. Also, the upload schedule for the podcast, at least right now, is Saturday morning, because I record every Friday night, and I edit the podcast, make sure the audio is good, and then by the time my slow internet is able to actually upload the podcast, it will go up probably very early morning on Saturdays. So that is currently the upload schedule, but it is subject to change, obviously. And I have had thoughts about doing, more than one a week, but for right now, I'm sticking to just one podcast a week, where I record every Friday night and upload it Saturday morning. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover in the podcast. As always, if you have any comments, please leave them down below. I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, see ya.